course, as always, this episode of uNIVERSITY is brought to you by whatever generic sparkling water is on sale at Target, because I wouldn't be me if it weren't for my delicious, I think this is passion fruit. I couldn't tell you what it is. Anyway, it's good to be back. Hey, Splash, thanks for the temp music. I love this. But this is a very different, very special episode of uNIVERSITY, the first of what shall be quite a few over the next 10 or so days, because, folks, for the first time in the history of this company, we are headed to Mobile, and by we, I mean me. I am going to be your guide, your tour guide of sorts. I don't know. If you could come up with a better name, I would love to know it. But I'm Zach Berman, of course, and this is uNIVERSITY. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of things immediately. The Senior Bowl is next Saturday. That would be February 5th. The game is not until Saturday. You do have the events that start on Tuesday of next week. So it will go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the game Saturday. Tuesday the 1st is when things kick off down in Alabama. I will not be in Alabama until Wednesday night, so I will be there for Thursday, Friday's festivities, and, of course, Saturday's game. But let's just get into it right now, because the rosters have been out for a couple days, and of course, as I successfully predicted on one of our live streams a couple weeks ago, the coaching staffs for the Senior Bowl, which unfortunately for me, someone that is allergic to peanuts, is sponsored by Reese's. So I cannot eat your delicious peanut butter cups down in Alabama. I am sorry. But Robert Saleh's New York Jets coaching staff will be there coaching the national team, and for the American team, it will be Dan, I will bite your kneecaps off, Campbell's Detroit Lions coaching staff with the American team. Now, for these rosters, they have been completely filled out. I'm just going to give you the rundown tonight, and then once we get closer, little by little, I'll give you everything from the history of this game to some of these players that have come up through the ranks because of it, and most importantly, some players that I think you're going to want to look out for, not just in the Senior Bowl, but in the Combine that leads up into the draft. So let's start with the national team and Robert Saleh's crew. We're going to go from, on my phone here, down to up. So starting with the wide receiver class. Out of Rutgers University, Bo Melton, speedster, great special teams guy, someone that's likely got a future in the NFL as a kick punt returner. That's where we begin. Jahan Dotson out of Penn State, someone whose name I've called quite a few times over the course of this season on uNIVERSITY. Really talented route runner, guy with good hands. Should be an expected late first round, early second round pick. Somewhere around that. Out of North Dakota State, Christian Watson. I'm going to be real with you. I got to watch more NDSU. Shout out to all my boys from North Dakota State on their baseball team that I worked with this past summer in Nebraska. Out of Romeo Dobbs, out of the University of Nevada, Romeo Dobbs, or is it Doubs? He will be joining the American team as well, the national team, as well as the number one wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bearcats this past season, Alec Pierce, as well as Khalil Shakir out of Boise State, someone that's made a name for himself. Doubs could be a sneaky late round one pick. I would actually have to agree with you on that. I really like his skill set. Tight ends. And I know that a certain Nick that happens to be the captain of this uSTADIUM ship is a big fan of a certain tight end on this that's going to be under this Jets coaching staff, and that would be Colorado State's Trey McBride. He is my tight end number 1A, and I'll get to who my 1B is a little bit later in this show. Also joining the Jets coaching staff, Charlie Kohler out of Iowa State, is expected to be tight end 1 or 2 coming into this season. Iowa State, of course, a little bit of a disappointment under Matt Campbell this year. Cole Turner out of Nevada, as well as Jeremy Ruckert out of the Ohio State University. Trey McDaddy, as Nick happens to chime in. Jake Ferguson out of Wisconsin. Running back class for the Jets coaching staff. Rashad White out of Arizona State University. Hassan Haskins, a St. Louis native out of the Michigan Wolverines. Go Blue. Abram Smith out of Baylor. Jerome Ford, the ex-Alabama, former Cincinnati Bearcat as well. And last but not least, someone who is very near and dear to my heart because he happens to have graduated from the same school that I currently attend. Someone that I will make sure to keep an eye out on. No bias whatsoever. Maybe just a little bit. That is Tyler Beatty out of the University of Missouri, the SEC's leading runner on the year. Just got to make sure to drop that in there. Quarterback class. 3 out of the top 5 QBs in this class, I would say, will be under Robert Saleh's crew. Of course, the Jets do not need a quarterback, but Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati, Ocean Township, New Jersey's finest Kenny Pickett out of Pitt, and Carson Strong out of Nevada will be headlining that class. As for your special teams units, Jordan Stout is your punter for Team National out of Penn State, and Andrew Mevis out of Iowa State is your place kicker. The brother of Mizzou kicker Harrison Mevis, who is going to be one of the best kickers in college football next season. Offensive linemen. This is a big group. Let's get right to it. Jatire Carter out of Southern University. Luke Godicke out of Central Michigan. The Chippewas have a representative. Actually, are going to have quite a few. Cole Strange out of UT Chattanooga. Abraham Lucas out of Washington State. Go Cougs. Marquis Hayes out of Oklahoma. One of my draft crushes, someone that I'm going to make sure to put a lot of attention towards over the next couple weeks. Trevor Penning, tackle out of Northern Iowa. One of the best FCS players we have seen come out of the draft in years. Matt Waletsko, I believe I got that right, out of North Dakota. The biggest man in college football, Daniel Fale out of Minnesota. Let me get you his stats right there. Andrew Stuber out of Michigan. Nick I'm out of Fordham. I'm just going to try and get this right. Nick Zalage? Zakage. Oh, boy. Yeah, I got to work on my pronunciations a little bit. Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan. Another good tackle prospect. Someone that might creep into the first round as well. And without even looking at the scroll, Splash and I are on the same page there. Zion Johnson, one of the best interior offensive linemen out of the class out of Boston College. Your long snapper for Team National is Cam Adamitis out of Pitt. And now your linebacker class. Troy Anderson out of Montana State. Brian Asamoah II out of OU. Chad Muma out of Wyoming. Keep an eye on him as well. Sterling Weatherford out of Miami. And Jesse Luketa out of Penn State. Mike Rose out of Iowa State. Darian Beavers out of Cincinnati. Terrell Bernard out of Baylor. And, of course, the crown jewel of this linebacking class for Team National, that would be Devin Lloyd out of the University of Utah. Player I have been very high on right from the jump. Team National's fullback is Jeremiah Hall out of Oklahoma. And now, defensive lineman, Otito Agbania out of UCLA. Azizi Otamiwu, I think that's it, out of Minnesota. Isaiah Thomas out of Oklahoma, as well as Perion Winfrey. Arnold Ebikidi out of Penn State, another guy to keep your eye on. Definitely one of the more talented edge rushers that's going to be in the, I'd say, second, third round. Maybe first. He could be a Joe Tryon type where he could slide into the first round. Kyrie Smith out of Ohio State, as Gus Johnson so lovingly calls him. Haskell the Rascal, Haskell Garrett out of Ohio State. boy Mafe out of Minnesota, Dominique Robertson out of Miami of Ohio, Logan Hall out of Houston, one of the more athletic defensive linemen in this class, Travis Jones out of UConn, as well as Myjay Sanders out of Cincinnati, edge rusher that might have had his stock drop a little bit over the last few weeks. I still think he's a second-round prospect at worst. Another guy to keep your eye on, Joseph Kirby, safety out of Illinois. Now we're to defensive backs, J.T. Woods out of Baylor, Gregory Jr. out of Ouachita Baptist. You want to think I got that right? Jalen Watson out of Washington State, Damari Mathis out of Pitt, Tariq Castro Fields out of Penn State, Joshua Williams out of Fayetteville State. Here's a guy to keep your eye on, Kobe Bryant out of Cincinnati, and Jalen Petre out of Baylor. If I had to pick a couple guys to watch from this class, I'm going to go Khalil Shakir out of Boise State, and I'll make sure to have this on a list so you all can see this if you're not watching the stream. Trey McBride, of course. Yes, Khalil Shakir, late round 2, early round 3. He's a good jump ball guy. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Carson Strong. I am intrigued by Carson Strong. Not a first-round prospect like many were expecting, unless he shows up and shows out at the Senior Bowl. Tyler Beatty out of Mizzou, definitely a guy to keep your eye on. Trevor Penning and Bernard Raymond as well, two non-Power 5 offensive linemen that are going to be worth watching. Travis Jones out of UConn and Joseph Kirby out of Illinois. Those are the guys that I'm going to keep a very close eye on the national side. As for Dan Campbell's Team American, let's get going. And I'm going to go in opposite order. I'm going to start with defensive backs. And right off the bat, a guy that I love in this draft class, that would be Roger McCreary out of Auburn. Someone that was put up against number 1 SEC receivers every single week and locked them down like there was no tomorrow. Definitely not someone that was expected to be a first-round prospect coming into the season. He is definitely expected to be one coming out of the season. Mario Goodrich out of Clemson, Darion Kendrick, formerly of Clemson, now University of Georgia, Yusuf Corker out of Kentucky, Caleb Evans out of Missouri, Cam Taylor-Britt out of Nebraska, Zion McCollum out of Sam Houston State, Alontae Taylor out of Tennessee, Josh Thompson out of Texas, Leon O'Neal Jr. out of Texas A&M, Tyson Anderson out of Toledo, UTSA's very own Tariq Woolen. And that is your defensive back group for the national team. Excuse me, the American team. Okay, defensive lineman, Fedarian Mathis out of Alabama. That's a guy to watch. Definitely one of the better interior defensive linemen in the class this year. John Ridgway out of Arkansas, Zachary Carter out of Florida, Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State, Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia, Josh Paschal out of Kentucky, Neil Farrell Jr. out of LSU, Kingsley Ngabare out of South Carolina. There's another name to watch, another guy that is going to need to show up at the Senior Bowl if he wants to creep his way into first-round discussions. He's got the potential. Michael Clemens out of A&M, Amari Barno out of Virginia Tech, D'Angelo Malone out of Western Kentucky. Another name to watch here, Cameron Thomas out of San Diego State. Your fullback, Connor Hayward out of Michigan State. Appalachian State's DeMarco Jackson starts your linebacking core. Jeremiah Moon out of Florida. Quay Walker out of Georgia. Here's a guy, Channing Tindall out of Georgia. Might be a little bit overshadowed by Nakobe Dean, but Channing Tindall, third, fourth round guy that is going to make an impact in the NFL. Jojo Dolman out of Nebraska. Damon Clark out of LSU. Aaron Hansford out of Texas A&M. Jordan Silver out of Arkansas is your long snapper. And now, offensive lineman, there's a lot of them. Jamari Salyer out of Georgia. Justin Schaefer, also out of Georgia. Tackle that would like to climb his way into the first round, Darian Kennard out of the University of Kentucky. Max Mitchell out of, University of Louisiana. Ed Ingram out of LSU. Dylan Parham Another name to watch, a guard that could creep his way up with a good performance in the Senior Bowl out of Memphis. Braxton Jones out of Southern Utah. Cade Mays out of Tennessee. Chris Paul, the football player, not the basketball player, out of Tulsa. UTSA's Spencer Burford and Kyrie Smith out of Virginia Tech makes up that O-line class along with Luke Fortner from Kentucky. Good special teams group from the American team. Cameron Dicker is your place kicker out of Texas. Another Gus Johnson call. Dicker the kicker. And Jake Barta, one of the best punters in America, out of Georgia, is their punter. I love this quarterback class for Team American. Malik Willis out of Liberty. There was a big discussion after last night. Is the most athletic quarterback in the class the one worth taking? Malik Willis is the most athletic quarterback in this class. And you watched last night, you watched Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, and you think to yourself, man, we need a quarterback like that. I don't know if Malik Willis can get anything near those two, but he's your best shot if you want a guy that can develop into maybe something like that out of Liberty. Bailey Zapp, the passing leader for the entire country out of Western Kentucky, as well as, talk about a fall from grace, Sam Howell, who I don't think is a first-round quarterback. I have a third-round grade on Sam Howell. I think he was carried by a good team around him. Maybe it's the North Carolina thing. He reminds me way too much of Mitch Trubisky. I'm sorry to the Sam Howell believers. I know there are a lot of you, but I don't see it. Running backs for this class, Brian Robinson out of Alabama. He had quite the show in the down the stretch, especially after Bama lost both their receivers. He put on a good show. Monte Price out of Florida International. Damian Pierce out of Florida. James Cook out of Georgia, the younger brother of Dalvin, rounds out the running back class. Another good tight end class for Team American that is headlined by Coastal Carolina's Isaiah Likely. No pun intended, likely a second or third round pick. Grant Calcaterra at SMU and Daniel Bellinger out of San Diego State. Also there, as well as Greg Dulcich out of UCLA. Receiver class for this group, it's okay. I think the other receiver class is personally a little bit better. Calvin Austin III out of Memphis. Reggie Roberson out of SMU. He caught a big Hail Mary to beat Louisiana Tech earlier this season. Danny Gray out of SMU. Jalen Tolbert, that's a name to watch, out of South Alabama. Velus Jones Jr. out of Tennessee. Trey Turner out of Virginia Tech. And last but not least, Ontario Drummond out of Ole Miss. So, well, there you have it. That's your Senior Bowl roster for 2022. I think Team American is a little bit weaker than Team National. But if you want me to circle some names, Roger McCreary out of Auburn, Fedarian Mathis out of Alabama, Kingsley Ngabare out of South Carolina, Cam Thomas out of San Diego State, Channing Tindall out of Georgia, Cade Mays out of Tennessee, and of course, is it a cop-out to say Malik Willis? It might be. I'm not sure. But let's just call it as it is. Now, the Senior Bowl is one of the most historic events in all of the National Football League. It's been going and going and going since 1950. And it's been held in Mobile since 1951. First year of its existence, it was held the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville. Now, to go back through the list, let's look at some Senior Bowl MVPs, because there are some names here that are pretty relevant in the NFL today. And just to go through a couple of them, Chad Pennington, LaDainian Tomlinson. Some of you may have heard of him. Antoine Randall, Phillip Rivers, Matt Forte, Brandon Graham, Dee Ford, Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, Justin Herbert. 3 straight years the Giants drafted the Senior Bowl MVP quarterback Davis Webb out of Cal, Kyle Lauletta, oh man, that is a name and a half, out of Richmond, and Daniel Jones out of Duke, of course. Senior Bowl has only ever featured 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Heisman players. It could have featured 10. Devontae Smith did accept an invitation. He also didn't play. Most recent Heisman winner to play in the Senior Bowl is Baker Mayfield. Of course, this year's Heisman winner was a sophomore. So Bryce Young is not playing in the Senior Bowl. But let's look at some coaches that have come through the Senior Bowl. Last year's coaching staffs: Brian Flores and Matt Rule. The year prior, Zach Taylor and Matt Patricia. I think this is a really, really, really good coaching staff crew, because some of them have not been very good. Look at 2018, Vance Joseph versus Bill O'Brien. That's not great. Jason Garrett versus Gus Bradley. Ken Wisenhunt versus Gus Bradley. Jeez, these are some names. Martin Lewis has been the Senior Bowl head coach quite a few times, as well as Dennis Allen. Jim Schwartz has done it more than once. Mike Nolan did it 2 years in a row. John Gruden's done it twice. But of course, as these two coaches are coming off their first years of their coaching staffs, first Senior Bowls for Robert Saleh and Dan Campbell. Of course, we're going to have coverage throughout the week coming up to this Senior Bowl. I'm going to be down in Mobile Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and from there it is all systems go. I'll tell you what I see, because I'm going to see things that most people are not going to be aware about. You always hear about these conversations that take place between coaches, between GMs. Of course, if you're a Giants fan, your new GM, Joe Shane, is 110% going to be down there. And most coaches tend to make their trips to the Senior Bowl. Bill Belichick is a usual suspect down at the Senior Bowl. So I'm going to be able to tell you who has been conversing with who looks like they might have a future getting drafted by which team. We shall see. But until then, I'll see you around. Start the clock, because we are only less than 2 weeks out from Mobile. Until then, I will see you soon.